Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about how mentors can manage a small group. This is more of an art in addition to being a skill. So I'm going to give you some basics that have helped me in managing small groups. And this skill, hopefully, is translatable across any time you might have a small group experience, whether it is a mentoring experience or even a teaching experience. So ultimately, there are two primary keys to managing a small group. The first is, and very important, is that you need to provide engaging and thoughtful content that can only be discussed or accomplished in a small group setting. And the key here is engaging and thoughtful and only accomplished in a small group setting. So if there's any content or ways of teaching something that a student can do on their own or a mentee can do on their own, for example, listening to a lecture, then there's no reason to have the small group. That is something that they can do independently. So things like discussing goals on a mentoring pathway, that is very difficult to do for the mentees on their own, asynchronously, for example. So the small group space itself should be reserved for those times when you need to have really engaging and thoughtful discussions. Number two, you want to involve all members in the group in the conversation. I'm going to go over that in a little bit, but let me show you two different scenarios that are very common to small groups, both of which are effective when used at the right time. So the first one is this. So in this case, what I've highlighted, now I realize this is a round table, but you can imagine this being a Zoom room as well. And so here, if we were in a live space at a round table, the two facilitators of the small group are located in the same space. And that has some advantages and that has some disadvantages. The red squares here represent the students that are in the small group. I put a lot of squares in there. Really, you want no more than 5 to 8 people in a particular small group. And that also goes for Zoom chats. Now, the nice thing is, and I'll say this as an aside, I love using Zoom, or in this case, you're going to use Mentor City. I love using those applications because students might not look like they're engaged, but they might be following the chat, or they might be providing ideas through the chat. And so I have really learned to love online small groups because I've been able to reach more people, not fewer, in those interactions. So this video is not intended to be a video about how to do things live and how to do things online, but this is more about the principles. So remember that you want to have engaging and thoughtful content that can only be discussed and accomplished in a small group. So I'm sure you have found yourself in a meeting or a class where you're just bored and your presence is really not necessary. So that stems from situations in which the participants feel that they're not important or valued in that particular discussion space. So it's really important as a mentor to make sure that you involve everyone in some way. That doesn't have to be that they're saying something, but if they're involved in some way and being creative on what that some way means. As I mentioned, you could use the chat. For instance, I've always wanted to run a meeting where we're only chatting on the chat box. I think that would be a lot of fun. I've just never had the guts to try it. But you're involving people in some way. Remember that people will engage in spaces in their own way in which they feel safe. Okay, so in the context of mentoring, when mentees, feel valued and safe that their mentor is invested in their presence, they are going to be involved. Again, they might not say anything, but they might contribute something small or a chat, or they will look engaged. All of these things are things that you are going to want to pay attention to. Now, sometimes that engagement might need some prompting for you. So asking participants yes or no questions might get answers, but they're not going to elicit discussion. So make sure your questions are things where a participant, your mentee, cannot just answer with a short answer. Now that gets old sometimes because it's very thought-provoking and can require a lot of energy, but use a mix of questions to allow your mentees to engage. Setting up a safe space for discussion and asking value-based questions requires you to know your mentee and what may or may not be appropriate for the small group setting. Make sure you spend some time, even at the beginning of the meetings, if you're just getting started, to get to know each other and find out how you with your mentee or mentees, if we're talking about a small group, can add value to the discussion that no one could have done on their own. So again, setting up a safe space for discussion by asking value-based questions instead of declarative or episodic-based questions will always elicit some sort of discussion. For example, so asking an individual or group of mentees what interactions they had that made them feel successful will result in very different responses than what did you do this week? Usually the latter question ends up with a lot of crickets in the room. That said, everybody might be having an off day and you're just not going to have a lot to say. And that's okay. Sometimes we have to be okay with those kinds of moments. And then maybe you take a step back and actually do ask what went well this week, or maybe talk about something in pop culture just to get the conversation started. Any of those techniques might help you out. Okay, so what these lines are showing is that the mentor is directing the conversations and that they're directed at individual mentees or participants in the group. Another technique I like to use is what I term controlled chaos. And this is a difficult thing to do, but I find it the most fun. So you'll notice here, at least if we're in a live space, the blue squares are the mentors or the teachers or whomever are located within the group. And so that any conversations that are happening between, in the context of this, mentors and mentees has to cross across all spaces. So as you can see here, my conversation lines now change instead of being unidirectional into being multidirectional, where I'm encouraging people to talk with each other in little miniature groups. This obviously works really well when you're live, and it's very difficult on Zoom or in Mentor City when you have to talk one at a time. But if you utilize the chat, it accomplishes the same idea. So involving all members of the group in a conversation of controlled chaos, it really is a skill that takes a lot of practice and opportunity, and you will get used to it over time. You want to encourage conversations, and then learning how to manage that is part of the art. So I define controlled chaos as directing energy towards accomplishing a goal. In the context of small group mentoring interactions, this looks like something where all members of the group are interacting with each other to solve an issue or to help provide feedback. So sometimes this results in smaller side conversations, which is okay until those conversations get off track. And that's where the art of being a facilitator comes in, is you have to listen to all of the different conversations that are happening at the same time. That does take some time to develop that skill, but don't be afraid of it because it can really result in a lot of fun conversations. You could even do mini groups and then have people report back. That might work really well. So as long as the conversations are leading to that desired outcome, then this is possible to do. And it is possible to facilitate mini groups happening within a group. You have to be a really good listener, and you have to have really good presence that helps people or helps the group direct towards an end goal. This is the type of technique that's used in a problem-based learning environment or a team-based learning environment. So if you're used to that style, this is really no different. Okay, so again, the visual is you want conversations to happen organically and naturally towards an end goal. All right, good luck and have fun with this one.